Gondwana Records podcast. Gondwana Records podcast.
Welcome back to the Gondwana Records podcast with Seth Ford-Young of Phi-Psionics, the immersive music project from Los Angeles. I'm your host Mari, and it's been a pleasure speaking with Seth, hearing about his unique musical path and his soulful perspective on music and life. In the previous episode,
I really wanted to be a part of something. I had some troubles as a kid, and I think being in a band helped me feel like I was part of a community, which is also something that's really important to me still.
Seth shared how he has always valued being part of a community. With the new album Expanding to One, Seth has embraced a new approach to creating music, and the album showcases not only the talented musicians, but also the beautiful sense of unity within their community. In this episode,
reaching out to the greater community and to people who I find inspiring and I really respect what they're doing, and inviting them in, and then having them contribute to something that to me was definitely an expansion of our sound, but that still sounded very much like Phi-Psionics.
we explore the meaning behind the project Phi-Psionics through the album Expanding to One. Let's begin. And Expanding to One is the latest album, and you've taken a new approach to making this record.
While the Cradle and especially Octava were sort of introspective with themes of like self-growth and looking inward, I wanted to make a record that was more about looking outward and connecting with community and the world. Sort of taking whatever you've learned in that self-growth period and in your introspection, taking that out into the world, sort of my thoughts. And that's part of why I invited so many guests to be involved. The music community here is really inspiring. I mean, I was saying earlier how I don't really listen to much music, but I do go out and see music, live music a lot. So there could be a week where I have easily listened to more live music than recorded music because it's just my listening habits. And I get inspired by everything from the way people are playing, but also how they are in community and how I can see, like watching Jeff Parker and his quartet play. I can walk to a place where I go see Jeff play, and seeing how they interact and seeing how their community works is just as inspiring maybe as the notes they're playing. So inviting that larger community in to our process and helping us express something new felt exciting to me.
The album was recorded at Healing Force of the Universe Records in Pasadena, and it was an event. So you weren't just recording music with musicians. There was audience, and it was ticketed and was open to the public.
That's right. Yeah, we did 6 sessions over 3 months, so every other week in the spring of 2024. And I had different bands pretty much every week. We did have an audience. It's a record store, so it's not enormous. I think maybe the most people we have in there is like 60 or 70 people. But it's very much an intentional listening room. It's kind of a deep listening room. And I remember the first time I walked in there, Josh Johnson and Jay Belrose were playing with some other folks, and everyone was quiet and sitting on couches and bean bags and cross-legged on the floor and a few chairs around, and I thought I could record in here, you know, and I had already thought about doing a live residency. So I pretty immediately asked the owner if they would be interested, and they were. So it was good. They shared the vision, and it's a good sounding room. And we didn't use their PA or anything, so we're just using the microphones to record. And the audience kind of had to lean in a little bit more to hear us, because, you know, if we have some quieter instruments like the flute playing, we just sort of matched the band's volume to the quieter instrument. And I think that really created an intimacy. Since I was wanting to incorporate a lot more free improvisation, that having an audience was helpful. I feel like it makes more sense to make music like that. I feel like we, as musicians, if we're in the studio in this sort of isolated environment, that it can feel a little like you're not sure why you're doing what you're doing. You can be not sure of why, compared to when there's an audience and you're getting the energy back from them, and it's like, it's so immediate. There's no real question of why, you're just sort of doing it. And it's more considered, I think. So yeah, I really liked having the audience there. Definitely. They gave us back a lot of energy too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, having the audience in the same room and recording must be another level of music making.
Yeah, I mean, I think it keeps you focused too, you know. I guess that's why I say it's considered. It's like you really have to like want to get across what you're playing, you know. And also there's no second takes. So like when we're playing something in the studio, even if we're playing like a freer improv in the studio, I can say, okay, let's try that again, but we're going to do it with the horns at the beginning and the, you know, whatever. I can rearrange it or ask for the drums to play a different pattern or something. But recording it live like that, no, we're just on to the next piece. So if we're going to try it again, it's going to be at the next session, you know, where there's probably going to be different musicians too. So yeah, it made a very sort of focused, immediate feeling to the music, I think.
Another interesting element of this album is most of the songs were created in the moment.
Yeah, I think out of the 14 tracks, there's only 3 that are really fully composed. By fully composed, I mean there's a theme and a form and chord changes and maybe a written out bass line. And the rest were usually based on some kind of prompt that I would give the band. So I would say I wanted a certain type of feeling and maybe certain choice of instruments. Maybe I want 2 flutes on this, and we're going to start with just the flutes, and then the band will slowly percolate through. And so prompts kind of like that, and maybe I would give them a key or a mode or maybe some chords that I wanted to incorporate, but nothing more than that. It would be just a verbal prompt, no written sheet music for it.
That's really thrilling.
It was it's pretty fun. and a little, I mean, it's a little nerve-wracking in some ways because you don't know what you're going to get, but also really exciting. Yeah.
What did you gain from this approach, both creatively and emotionally?
I guess creatively, it really let me know that I could lead the band and have it sound like Phi-Sonics without even writing notes down. And that I could just sort of give them these verbal cues, and the music that came out sounded like us, which was really beautiful. And emotionally, I think it did help foster the feeling of community, to sort of let people loose and let them do their thing. I trusted that they were going to sort of serve the common goals of the group. But because they were let loose more, their voices were coming through really strong and really clearly in a way that I think is different with written music. You know, I like to write a lot of freedom into my written music as well, but having this freer approach just allowed people to express themselves, and you could really hear their personalities being added to the mix. Yeah. In a way, that musical expression also manifested in sort of our personal community feelings, you know, that the feeling of community was strengthened through inviting people to speak more freely. Yeah.
Gondwana Records podcast.
The magical moments that happened only because it was in this setup? I'm sure there are many.
Yeah, I mean, you know, listen to the record and you'll hear them. But I think one of the things that was striking to me was there was times where, certainly for the listeners, because people told me this, but also even for me, it was almost hard to distinguish between the written material and the improvised material. So especially Sylvan and Randall, who were there for all the sessions and play the saxophones and flutes, they would improvise these melodies together where it sounded like it was a written piece of music. nature signs that's just Sylvan and I. I think it sounds somewhat like a written piece, but it is just us improvising, the two of us. It was just, I think we chose a key to start in, and that was it. So yeah, experiencing the feeling of the band being able to, with very little direction, make it sound like the band, and also those moments where it felt like we were composing music as a group in the moment were really striking.
Gondwana Records podcast.
On this album, you do have core member of musician. Would you like to introduce them?
Sure. We have the band from The Cradle and Octava are back. So that's Sylvain Carton on saxophones and flutes, and Josh Colazzo on the drums, and Mitchell Yoshida on the Wurlitzer electric piano. And then over the years, we've had other people play shows with us, so they were very obvious people to invite. So that's Zach Tenorio, who plays Wurlitzer electric piano as well. He's actually my next door neighbor. I was very lucky to have him move in. And Gary Fukushima, who also plays the Wurlitzer piano, and Randall Fisher, who plays saxophones and flutes, who's really become a pretty important part of the band. I really like having the two woodwinds, and the way they play off of each other is really great. That's sort of the core folks. And then we had a lot of other guests that came in, maybe for one show.
Yeah, I mean, on the album credits, I was trying to count everyone. And so you have 14 tracks, and I think there are 15 musicians, including yourself.
That's true.
On the album.
Yeah.
That is a lot of coordination. Because you're creating the album, but also creating an event so people can be there. That must have been a lot of drive that you had in yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted this thing to happen, and I think I was digging into my DIY roots because I wasn't just coordinating the band and the material, I was also gathering up all my recording equipment and bringing it down to Healing Force for every session. And I had a lot of like notes and pieces of paper trying to keep track of who was playing on which week, and making sure everyone had everything they needed, and getting them down early to sound check and make sure that we had the recording rig up and going. And it was a lot. But again, I think in inviting all those folks and inviting people who I'd seen playing around town, like Jay Bellarose, who plays in Jeff Parker's quartet and numerous other things, and is such an inspiring player, to invite him in, and invite Spencer Zahn, who's another bass player who I really enjoy what he does, and Rocco DeLuca, who I make a lot of music with, brought his pedal steel, and Dylan Day, who's a great guitar player, among other folks who came down. It just also fostered a sense of community, and reaching out to the greater community and to people who I find inspiring and I really respect what they're doing, and inviting them in, and then having them contribute to something that to me was definitely expansion of our sound, but that still sounded very much like Phi-Psionics. Was really inspiring to me.
the title of the album really resonate with what you're doing.
Yeah. I think for a long time about album titles and song titles because, making instrumental music, we don't have a lot of opportunity to use words to express. So I thought long and hard about the album title, and expanding to one seemed like the only thing it could be, really. And I really like titles that could be interpreted many different ways. I figure if I can interpret it at least a couple different ways, then it's open for other people to interpret how they like, which feels important to me. But a couple of ways I think about it that I like are, well, very simply expanding our sound, expanding our contributors, and making one sound of that. But also thinking about expanding one's consciousness to a point where the self sort of evaporates and we can see that we're all connected. Those are sort of, two ways that I like to interpret it, but I invite people to interpret it their own way.
There are two songs that has the word pyramid in the track titles. One is New Pyramid and the other one is Before the Pyramid. What does the idea of pyramid represent for you, and how did you use those words into the making the music?
I mean, there's a lot of pyramids that were built in the ancient world, all over the world. They're in South America, they're here in the US, even in Europe, there's things like Newgrange that maybe it's not a pyramid, but it's a similar large monument. And I think a lot of those structures were built in an effort to understand man's place and connection to nature, or in some cases their gods or God or whatever. But also I like the idea that they're all built in large part with a lot of people, a lot of effort. I know some of them were built by slaves probably, but I like the idea of the willing, the people who made these structures willingly and with great effort and great cooperation. Also, a pyramid, if you look at it from the side, is a triangle, which is a triangle is delta, which is the symbol for change. So again, it's me liking to have multiple meanings in something. Yeah. And Before the Pyramids is the piece with just Sheila Govindarajan and Gary Fukushima, just duo, just keys and voice. And it was originally one of the nights where we performed New Pyramid, I asked them to improvise a intro.
Mm.
So it was literally before the pyramid, the new pyramid. And also just what she sang sounded so ancient and kind of timeless. Like it could have, if you took away the electric piano and just had her voice, it's something that I feel like could have been sung 1,000 years ago. And it's just sort of timeless, sort of ancient sounds. So.
Gondwana Records podcast.
So Los Angeles experienced a major wildfire recently, and many people lost their houses, and some musicians even lost their studios and instruments, and it was very tough to see that from London. And you're in Los Angeles and you probably had people affected around you, but how is the situation now?
It's tough. We're 5 months after the fires, I think now, 4 or 5 months, and it's going to be a years-long process for people. I know people who are trying to rebuild their homes and just dealing with that, and the insurance companies, and I think the community has really rallied, and I've played some benefits. I've contributed music to some benefit albums, and we've done our own little benefit with Gondwana, and there's been some people collecting instruments to distribute to people who've lost their instruments and their equipment, which is really great. Music Cares has been really good. So it's nice to see the community rallying around people who've been affected, but also the people that are affected are just, like I said, it's a years-long process that they're going to have to be going through. So we're going to have to continue to support them over the next years, I think. I think that'll be really important.
Yeah, definitely. It's a long process.
Yeah.
And definitely, like you said, in these times of disaster, we see people come together. And also music plays a very powerful part of healing process or unity process. And you have tracks titled Healing Time and There's Still Hope. And I wanted to ask about how you think of the role of music in healing and bringing people together.
Yeah, music has been really important for my healing, even back in my punk rock days. Having something that felt meaningful, that we could gather around, that we could connect through, has always been really important to me. And I think a lot of times we are in the modern world sort of untethered from our ancestral cultures that sort of infused meaning in our lives, whether it's through religion or traditional cultural practices and rites of passage or different sort of community rituals. We, especially in the US, it's maybe a little different in Europe and some other places, but we're so untethered from those traditions now that I think something like music, which is sort of non-denominational, we can all connect around it, whatever our politics or our religious beliefs are. I think it's really important to have that for the community and for our healing and just ways that we can feel human together. That's what sometimes I say, that music is a way for us to be human together, and just at our basic core, without all the distractions of extremist politics. And I think nature is another thing. We can all go to the beach and really enjoy the nature, so we can also really gather around music in a similar way. Healing Time is actually from the first session that we did. That has Jay Bellarose, who sounds like two people playing at once. He's playing the drums and the percussion. If you listen to that track, and it really does sound like there's a drummer and a percussionist. He's amazing. Dylan Day is playing guitar. Minta Spencer is playing harp. Zach Tenorio is playing the Wurlitzer piano. And we have Sylvain Carton and Randall Fisher playing saxophone or flute, and myself. I think there's 7 people on that track. I think I was a little emotional that day because it was the first session, and I was feeling the power of having these people gather, and we had a nice crowd of friends and strangers who were all there for this purpose. And it felt like a moment to heal. And also, the name of the place we were playing was Healing Force of the Universe. And that's really a truncated version of the real quote from Albert Eiler is, music is the healing force of the universe. So, I felt like here we are gathered, making music and healing, whether we set out to or not. I think that's what a lot of us get through the music. So I thought it was a fitting title.
Gondwana Records podcast.
I think when you gather people together and you're making music, it's like one of the most hopeful things, that you can do. In really dark times and like during COVID where we weren't really together, and I was like, well, why do we even make music? And then I would get together with people, or I would hear from someone across the world who was listening to the album, and I was like, okay, that's why we make music. It's, But yeah, even some tracks that are maybe a little darker on the album, like the very last track, Mysteries of the Dark, which features Dave Harrington on guitar, who's in the band Dark Side. So there's some dark stuff in there, but I feel like it's sort of like we're going into the dark together, so that even has something of like a heroic, like hopeful feeling to it. That's part of why I wanted to expand the group, is I wanted to get into different spaces and different emotions and different sort of musical textures, including some things that may be slightly darker or more energetic or whatever, but I think we managed to still make it sound like Phi-Psionics.
How do you explain Phi-Sonics to you or to people now this album is completed and out in the world? Meaning of the project.
I have said that in the past that it's sort of a spiritual exercise of connecting and being together. I think the word spiritual can be a little misleading. Some people think that means religious, which in my case, it's not. I'm not a religious person at all. But even someone who doesn't believe in a deity can still have in my opinion, a spiritual experience. And I think that for me, that spiritual experience is through connecting and being together and finding meaning together and making meaning together. And so that's what I'm trying to do with this group. And I think with this album, reaching out to more people and inviting more people to come in and add to that is what I'm wanting to do. It's like the new direction for the band.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your journey and experience and the thoughts behind your music making.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Gondwana Records podcast.
I hope you enjoyed the episodes with Seth Ford-Young of Phi-Psionics and the creative journey behind the new album Expanding to One. Coming up next, in episode 19, we feature saxophonist, flautist, and composer Chip Wickham. You can also catch up on previous episodes with Milo Fitzpatrick of Vega Trails, Subembo Kardup, Jasmine Myra, Keelan Rose, Hanya Rani, and Matthew Halsall. Thank you for listening and for your warm support.